My wife cheated and didn't hang up the phone. I heard 7 minutes of her date with another man, while I paid for her life. But when I confronted her and she destroyed my things, the revenge she never saw coming left her with nothing. I'm 27 years old. I work in it, and 4 months ago I found out my wife was cheating on me in the stupidest way possible. And when I say stupid, I mean she literally let me listen to an entire date she was having with another guy because she didn't hang up the phone properly. I still can't believe it happened like that. But well, here we are. I met Lauren when we were like 23 years old, I think. Or maybe I was 24 and she was 23. I don't remember exactly. We got married after dating for a year and a half. And honestly, at first everything seemed normal, you know? We were young and in love and all those things people say. I worked in it for a medium-sized company downtown. Nothing glamorous, but it paid well. And Lauren decided to stay home because, according to her, she wanted to focus on her hobbies and eventually start some business from home. At the time, it didn't seem weird to me. I mean, I made enough for both of us, and if she was happy that way, then perfect. Looking back, I have seen the signs, but I guess you never think it's going to happen to you until it happens. The thing is, Lauren never started any business. She spent all day at home. I don't know, doing what exactly. And when I got home from work, there was always some excuse about why the house was a mess or why there was no food prepared. I cooked almost every night after working 8 or 9 hours, but I didn't complain much because, I don't know, I guess I thought that's how marriages were or something like that. We were the typical case where I was the only one working and she stayed home, and I literally paid for everything, from the apartment rent to her outings with friends and all her online purchases that arrived every other day. We had joint bank accounts because, well, we were married and that's what you're supposed to do, right? Trust and all that. The day everything exploded was an ordinary Tuesday, like mid-September last year. I remember it was Tuesday because we always had team meetings on Tuesday afternoons and I hated them. It was like 1 p.m., and I was on my lunch break, sitting at my desk eating a sandwich I had bought at the building cafeteria, when I decided to call Lauren to see what was up. There was no particular reason. I just wanted to know how she was doing, and maybe ask if she needed me to buy anything on the way home. I dialed her number. It rang a couple times, and she answered with a super quick and curt, "Hello." And then immediately I heard a click, like she had hung up. But here's the thing. The phone didn't actually hang up. I don't know if she hit the button wrong or what happened, but the call stayed connected. At first I didn't hear anything but background noise, like soft music and the murmur of people talking, and I thought maybe she was at a mall or something. I was about to hang up myself when suddenly I heard her voice crystal clear saying, "I can't believe I almost answered that call in front of you." And then a man's voice, I didn't recognize, responded something like, "Who was it?" And she said, "Nobody important, just my roommate." My roommate. That's what she called me. I sat there with the phone against my ear, unable to move, like completely frozen. The next thing I heard was Lauren laughing, in a way I hadn't heard her laugh with me in months. And this guy saying something about how pretty she looked, and her all flirty saying things like, "Oh no, you really know how to make a girl feel special." I felt like someone had kicked me in the stomach. My heart was beating so loud I could hear it in my ears, but I couldn't hang up. I needed to know what else they were going to say. I quickly grabbed my laptop, connected the headphones to the phone, and opened a recording app we had installed for work meetings. I started recording everything. For the next 47 minutes, and yes, it was exactly 47 minutes because I later reviewed the recording like 1,000 times. I listened to my wife on a complete date with another man. I could hear they were at a restaurant, like one of those nice places with jazz music in the background and waiters who probably wear fancy aprons. Lauren ordered wine, something she never ordered when we went out because she always said she didn't like wine, and she spent the whole time talking about how boring her life was and how much she needed excitement. The guy, who I later found out was named Michael, talked about his job at some marketing company or something, and Lauren acted like it was the most fascinating thing in the world. At one point she said something like, "It's so different being with someone who really understands me, you know, someone who has ambitions and dreams." And me sitting there thinking, I don't have ambitions? Who pays for your entire life, Lauren? The conversation kept getting worse. I heard when the guy asked her about her living situation, and she told him she lived with a roommate, but that it was basically like living alone because he was always working and never home. She said her roommate was kind of boring, and they didn't do anything together. She didn't mention once that she was married. Obviously. The guy seemed super interested in her and asked if she'd like to come to his apartment after lunch. And she said that sounded perfect, but she had to be back before 6 because her roommate got home around 6:30 and she didn't want him to see her leaving. My shift ended at 5:30, and I normally got home between 6:20 and 6:40, depending on traffic. She had it all calculated. I don't remember much of those 47 minutes in terms of what else they did or said because I was in some kind of shock, like my brain wasn't processing the information well. I know they ate. I know they kept flirting. I know at some point he held her hand because she made a comment about how soft his hands were. When the call finally actually cut off, I sat there at my cubicle without moving, for I don't know how long. My coworker Andrew walked by and asked if I was okay, because apparently I looked pale, and I just told him I felt a little sick to my stomach, but I was fine. But I wasn't fine at all. I saved the recording in 3 different places: my phone, my laptop, and a USB I had in my backpack, because I don't know. I instinctively knew I was going to need evidence of this. Then I logged into the bank online and checked our accounts. I specifically looked for charges at restaurants in the area and found like 5 different ones in the last 2 weeks, all at midday, all at relatively expensive places downtown. There was one from 3 days ago at an Italian bistro that was called something like Bella Vista or Bella Vita. I don't remember exactly. That was only 10 minutes from my office. It was like 2 p.m. at that point, and I knew she was probably still on her date. I went to my supervisor and told him I had a family emergency and needed to leave early, which technically wasn't a lie. He gave me permission, and I got out of there. Andrew caught up with me in the parking lot and asked if I was really okay, and I don't know why, but I told him everything right there. I showed him the recording. I played him the first few minutes, and the guy was shocked. He told me to do what I had to do and that he'd cover for me at the office. He's a good friend like that, so I really appreciated that. I drove downtown looking for that restaurant from the card charge. I found one that matched, an Italian bistro on a street full of offices and boutique shops. I parked like half a block away and walked toward it, trying to see through the windows. And there they were. Lauren and a guy wearing a suit. Like 30-something years old, probably. She was wearing a dress I'd never seen her in. A navy blue one that was definitely new. And she was all done up with her hair down and full makeup. She never got dressed up like that for me. Not even when we went out to dinner on our anniversary did she put in that much effort. I stood there outside for a few minutes, not knowing what to do. Part of me wanted to go in and make a scene right there, but another more rational part told me I needed to stay calm. I finally decided that whatever. I had the evidence. I had the recording. I had the bank statements. And she had no way to deny it. I walked into the restaurant trying to look calm, even though inside I was about to explode. I walked straight to their table. Lauren saw me first and her face, literally, her face went through like 5 different emotions in 2 seconds. Shock, panic, fear, anger, and then that fake smile she used to put on when she tried to get away with something. The guy, Michael, looked at me confused. I stood in front of the table and said, "Hi, Lauren. Aren't you going to introduce me to your friend?" She started stammering something about what was I doing there, and I was supposed to be at work, and I just took out my phone, pulled up the recording and hit play. Her own voice came out of the phone saying, "I can't believe I almost answered that call in front of you." Michael's face changed immediately. He looked at her like, "What is this?" And Lauren tried to grab my phone, but I pulled it away. I said, "There's 47 minutes of this. Do you want me to play it all, or is this enough?" Michael looked between upset and confused, and he asked me who I was. I told him, "I'm her husband." The guy's face, seriously, was complete shock. He said something like, "Husband? You told me you lived with a roommate." And Lauren, all desperate, saying, "We could talk about this in private, that I didn't have to make a scene." Michael got up from the table and told me he had no idea she was married, that she had told him she was separated and living with a friend temporarily. I believed him because the guy looked genuinely surprised and upset. I told him it wasn't his fault, and that obviously she had lied to both of us. He said something to Lauren about how he couldn't believe she had lied to him like that, threw money on the table to cover the bill, and left. Lauren tried to stop him, but he basically ignored her. When we were alone, well, as alone as you can be in a restaurant full of people who were now staring at us, Lauren changed tactics completely. First, she tried the attack, saying, I had no right to spy on her and that invading her privacy like that was illegal and I don't know what else. Then she tried victimization, saying she felt lonely and I was never home and she needed attention. Then she tried minimization, that they had only gone out a couple times and nothing physical had happened. And finally, she tried emotional manipulation, crying and saying she loved me and we could get through this if I would just forgive her. I didn't say much. I was too angry and hurt to trust what might come out of my mouth. I told her we were getting divorced and it was over. She started crying harder, like making a complete scene. And the people in the restaurant were definitely staring, but honestly, I didn't care. I walked out of there and she followed me to the street, still begging and crying. I got in my car, locked the doors because I knew she was going to try to get in, and drove off. I saw her in the rearview mirror standing on the sidewalk with her phone in her hand, probably calling me, but I had already silenced her number. I drove around aimlessly for a while, trying to calm down and think about what to do. The first thing I did was call the bank from the car and cancel her access to all our credit cards and accounts. The customer service woman asked if I was sure, and I briefly explained I was in the process of getting divorced and needed to protect my finances. She helped me do everything right there over the phone. I transferred all the money from the joint accounts to a new account in just my name. It took like an hour to do the whole process, but I did it sitting there in the parking lot of some random Starbucks. Then I called my friend Trevor, a friend from college I'd kept in touch with. I explained the situation and asked if I could stay at his place for a few days while I sorted everything out. Trevor, who's a good friend, told me no problem, to come whenever I wanted. But before going to his place, I knew I had to stop by the apartment to get my important stuff. I got to the apartment around 6 p.m. Lauren was already there. Obviously, she had gotten there before me. As soon as I opened the door, she started with the drama again. First, she tried to hug me and I pushed her away. Then she went back to anger, saying how dare I humiliate her like that in public and that she had talked to her mom and her mom was on my side. But that didn't matter because I was abusive for having stalked her to the restaurant. I let her talk while I went to the bedroom and started putting my clothes in a big suitcase we had stored in the closet. She followed me around the apartment, alternating between crying, yelling, begging, and threatening. At one point, she said if I left, she was going to tell everyone I hit her, which obviously had never happened and never would, and I just took out my phone and started recording everything. I said out loud so it would be on the recording that I had never laid a hand on her, and any accusation like that would be completely false, and that she was making false threats right now. That shut her up a bit. I packed everything I could. My clothes, my personal laptop, important documents, some sentimental things I had from before I met her. It took me like 2 hours, and she was there the whole time, following me and saying things. At one point, she grabbed my arm, trying to stop me, and I told her calmly to let me go, that I didn't want to have to call the police. She let go but said I was a monster and ruined her life. The irony. When I finished packing, I loaded everything into my car, making several trips. She stood at the apartment door watching me with her arms crossed. Before I left, I told her I was going to get a divorce lawyer, and she'd be getting papers soon. She said she was going to get a lawyer too and make sure I was left with nothing. I reminded her I was the only one working and the only one with income, so good luck with that. I probably shouldn't have said that because it made her more furious, but I was tired of her victim attitude. I went to Trevor's house and he was great, like he gave me a room and space and didn't pressure me to talk about anything. His girlfriend was there too, and they were both super understanding. That night I barely slept. I just lay awake thinking about everything and feeling this weird mix of anger, sadness, and also a bit of relief that I now knew the truth and wasn't living in a lie. The next day, which was Wednesday, I skipped work because I needed to find a lawyer. Andrew covered for me again. He's a really good friend. I found a divorce lawyer who had good reviews online and got a consultation for that same afternoon. I showed him the recording, the bank statements showing all the restaurant charges, everything. The lawyer, a man around 50 years old, named Richard something, told me I had a pretty solid case, and that with that evidence, we could probably make the divorce relatively quick and favorable to me. He explained the process, how long it would take, the costs, all that. I signed with him right there. The next few days were crazy. Lauren started calling everyone we knew, friends, family, even my coworkers, telling them her version of the story where I was the bad guy who abandoned her out of nowhere and left her with no money. Some people believed her at first, especially people who knew her better than me. But when I started showing the evidence to people close to me, like my parents and my siblings and my best friends, obviously things changed. My mom was furious with Lauren, like she wanted to go to the apartment and tell her off, but I asked her not to, get involved because it would only make everything worse. Lauren's lawyer contacted her and divorce negotiations started. She wanted alimony, because according to her, she had become accustomed to a certain lifestyle, and I was responsible for maintaining it. My lawyer argued the marriage had been short. She was perfectly capable of working, and plus, she had been unfaithful with proven evidence, so she didn't deserve anything. He also asked that assets be divided equitably, but since almost everything was in my name because I had paid for it, there wasn't much to divide. While all this was happening in legal terms, Lauren stayed in the apartment because the lease was technically in both our names, even though I paid for everything. My lawyer told me I couldn't legally kick her out without a court order, so basically she stayed living in the place I paid for while we processed the divorce. It was frustrating, but the lawyer told me it was temporary, and eventually we could resolve that. About 2 weeks after everything exploded, Lauren did something that basically destroyed any chance of anyone feeling compassion for her. She discovered I had transferred all the money from the joint accounts to my personal account, which was completely legal according to my lawyer because it was my money that I had deposited, and she got furious. She went to the bank and tried to withdraw money, but obviously couldn't. So she went to the apartment and took all my stuff that was still there, like my books, some furniture that was mine from before we got married, photos, and threw them off the balcony of the apartment, which was on a 3rd floor. Literally threw them into the street. The neighbors called the police because it was a mess in the street with all my stuff scattered everywhere. When the police arrived, Lauren told them I had entered the apartment and threatened her, and that she acted in self-defense by throwing my stuff. But here's the thing. The building had security cameras in the hallways and at the entrance, and the footage clearly showed I hadn't been there all day. It also showed Lauren taking out my stuff and throwing it off the balcony. The police told her that was destruction of property and I could press charges if I wanted. I didn't press charges because my lawyer told me that would only drag everything out, and it was better to focus on finishing the divorce. But we did document everything with photos and the police report to use in the divorce process. Some of my stuff got completely broken. Like my personal laptop got smashed and some books I'd had since college were ruined. I was able to recover some things that weren't too damaged, but honestly, a lot was lost. After the incident of throwing my stuff, something unexpected happened. Michael, the guy Lauren was cheating with, contacted me through LinkedIn of all places. He sent me a message saying he had found out through a mutual friend about everything that happened after that day at the restaurant, and that he had some text messages from Lauren that could help me in the divorce. He asked for my email and sent them to me. They were conversations where she told him she was separated, that her ex, meaning me, was controlling and abusive, and that she was in the process of getting divorced. Basically, a bunch of lies she had told him to manipulate him. Michael told me in the email he felt terrible for having been part of this without knowing, and that he wanted to help in any way possible. I passed everything to my lawyer, and that basically sealed the case. With all the evidence we had, the recording, the bank statements, the incident of throwing my stuff, and now the text messages showing Lauren's pattern of lies, her lawyer basically told her she had no case, and it was better to accept a settlement. The divorce was finalized about 3 months after all this. Lauren didn't get alimony, didn't get any compensation, and I kept everything that was in my name, which was basically everything. She had to move out of the apartment and find her own place and her own job, which from what I heard she eventually did. The judge basically said that, given she had been unfaithful, had committed destruction of property, and hadn't contributed financially to the marriage, There was no basis for her to receive anything. Now, 4 months after all this started, I'm living alone in a new apartment that's closer to my work. It's smaller than the one I shared with Lauren, but it's mine. You know, my space without drama or lies. Trevor and his girlfriend helped me move and buy some new furniture. I went back to therapy, something I had stopped years ago, because even though I'm better, I definitely needed to process all this with a professional. The truth is, there are still days where I feel angry about all the time and money and emotional energy I wasted on that relationship. 3 years of marriage plus the time we dated before getting married, almost 5 years total, and it was all basically a lie. I wonder how long she was cheating on me before I found out. Was it just Michael, or were there others? I'll never know the complete answer, and I guess it doesn't matter anymore, but there are also days where I feel relieved that I found out when I did and didn't waste more years of my life. Relieved we didn't have kids that would have complicated everything 1,000 times more. Relieved to be out of a relationship where I clearly wasn't valued or respected. Andrew at work tells me I look better now, more relaxed, and I guess he's right. I don't have that constant anxiety anymore of wondering what Lauren is doing or if she's being honest with me. I've started going out more with friends, doing things I stopped doing when I was married because Lauren always said they were boring or a waste of time. I went back to playing video games, something she hated. I joined a gym and go like 3 times a week. I'm saving money for the first time in years because I don't have to support someone else. It's weird but good at the same time. As for Lauren, I don't know much about what she's doing now, and honestly, I'm not interested. I blocked her on all my social media and on my phone. Sometimes I hear things through mutual friends, like that she's working at some store or dating someone new, but I don't pay much attention. That part of my life is over, and I'm focused on moving forward. I don't know if I'll get married again or even have a serious relationship soon. I'm still working on trusting people again, on not seeing red flags where there aren't any just because I'm traumatized by what happened. My therapist says it's normal and it's going to take time, and I know she's right. For now, I'm okay alone, learning to enjoy my own company and rebuilding my life on my own terms. The only thing I regret is not realizing earlier. There were signs. There were definitely signs I ignored or rationalized. The way she was always on her phone. The way she got dressed up to go out with friends but not for me. The way she never wanted to do things with me but always found time for her own plans. I should have trusted my instinct that told me something wasn't right. But well, I guess everything happens for a reason, and this taught me a lot about what I want and don't want in my life. So yeah, that's my story. A marriage that ended because my wife didn't hang up the phone properly and let me listen to her entire date with another guy. Sometimes life is strange like that. And even though it hurt and still hurts sometimes, I'm in a better place now than I was 4 months ago. And that's enough for now, I guess.